Hey friends, it's Melvin. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Here's just a few quick things I wanted to notify you guys about before we get started. First up, very soon, new episodes will be releasing Wednesday mornings rather than Tuesday. So don't panic if you don't see a new episode on Tuesday. Just wait a little longer and you'll see it in your feed. Second, we've introduced a mailbag. Check those show notes and toward the bottom you'll see a mailbag link. You'll then be able to text us any questions you might have about movies, the movie industry, or any movie/Christian related questions you might have. Then we'll respond in a future episode, so send us your questions now. Up next, Patreon polls, which are available to Patreon supporters at the $3 tier or higher, have been updated. Supporters can now suggest films or shows to be reviewed at the end of each month. The two most liked submissions will become the options for the Patreon poll, so if you want to hear us talk about your favorite movie or show, join our Patreon and start campaigning. And lastly, whether you're a new or longtime listener, please consider writing a review or rating the Cinematic Doctrine podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Apart from financially supporting on Patreon, these are the two most helpful ways to support the show. And that's it. Enjoy the episode. You're listening to Cinematic Doctrine.
So, we're talking about streaming shows predominantly because that's kind of where things are going. And recently I actually got Peacock. Have you used Peacock at all?
I think I used Peacock to watch Sinister last year for the October episode, for a Halloween episode. That was the only time I used Peacock.
Okay, yeah, because I got it because I'm going like Comcast Xfinity, and they give you their own version of like a Roku device called a Flex, which is just terrible. I don't know if you ever tried to use one of them.
I've used a Roku. Is it just...
Roku's great.
Roku is great. My father-in-law pretty much gets the new model every time, and then he just like gives the old one away. And the old one still always works like perfectly fine. It's not like an Apple product where it seems like they're putting out like updates that force obsolescence.
Right.
It's like it actually still good. But it's called Flex?
It's called Flex.
That's like
Flex. I think there's two X's in the name or something.
That's like so full of itself, just to be bad.
Well, yeah, it's interesting how they're trying to compete. Because I was just thinking about that because I finally got Peacock for the first time, and they actually have like the WWE on there. Like the WWE Network is getting merged into that. Some people even think NBC Universal might just buy the WWE, which would be the worst thing to happen to wrestling ever. And then, because I was thinking about that, and I also think about the fact that Jupiter's Legacy? Did you know anything about that show?
Isn't that the Netflix one?
Yeah, it cost like $220 million, and it got canceled for one season.
So, was it aired on television?
It was a Netflix original. It's part of Mark Miller's like universe of characters, who did like Kingsman and all that stuff.
But then, wait, so... Start over. I'm really confused. Are you saying that this is like one of those shows where like kind of like You, where it's like it was made by someone else, then Netflix bought it, and now Netflix calls it a Netflix original?
No. So these are two topics that are the same in my brain. So follow me here. Jupiter's Legacy is a Netflix original series that they paid for. They spent $220 million to make this big superhero show for Netflix, and it tanked. They're canceling after one season, and so what they're doing is they're trying to create spinoffs for it. And so I'm just thinking about like Netflix is spending all this money to try and like create their own superhero franchise, and NBC Universal is creating his Peacock now, and they're trying to team up with the WWE to make an Uber kind of like streaming service that will like try and get wrestling fans involved. And it's just like there's this arms race to try and create more streaming content. And I wonder if like Disney Plus is kind of to blame in a sense, because Disney has their own streaming service with an endless supply of originals. And they have guaranteed like audience because there's going to be...
Because they're Disney.
Like, people are going to keep subscribing because they need Star Wars, they need Marvel, they need all of these different franchises. And there's...
It's like an IV. Please give me Star Wars.
Yeah, but that's the continuous drip. Like they're never going to run out of stuff. Amazon has greenlit a Lord of the Rings anime.
And 2 more seasons of Invincible.
Yes, which is awesome. But I don't know. It's just like, where does this all end? It's kind of my question. Where like now Netflix is spending hundreds of millions of dollars to try and compete to create their own superhero television show, while Disney just keeps getting to poop them out at like a nonstop like level. I don't know. It's just like there's a part of me that's just like worried about the future of streaming because of it. where like everything's becoming so like NBC has their own streaming service now. So if you want to watch The Office or Parks and Rec, you got to get Peacock.
Yeah, I'll just stick to VUDU, man. I love that VUDU overcame like the digital marketplace for like, because there were like a lot of places you could buy movies online and have them saved. And then like they kind of died out, but VUDU still lives. And so like if you want Invader Zim and you don't want to have Paramount Plus, because why would you want Paramount Plus?
Oh my God,
you could just buy Invader Zim's 2 seasons, which I could have sworn there were 3 seasons, man, but it was 3 discs. It was 3 discs, 2 seasons. That
it's
I did
like
not
30 episodes or something.
barely. It's 46 11-minute episodes.
Okay.
Or something like that. And technically, I think 20 others that were ready to start being animated and then just got canceled. But I can buy that on VUDU. I don't need to get Paramount Plus. I have seasons 1 and 2 of The Office, and I also have a thrift store nearby, which always has seasons of The Office there. So you can just go there. I think just like how post-COVID, there's sort of this like not surprise, but like where I work technically is making more money and is more successful than it was 2 years ago. So before COVID ever existed. And I think there might be some sort of like, let's get back to like when things were a lot more easier and more in our control than like some sort of aggregate algorithm gives me stuff. And because I would much rather just own these things than, I mean, you're a big proponent for that too, but I'd just much rather own these things. Like WandaVision, I'd love to like buy and have on Blu-ray. That's actually one of the only reasons I bought the Stranger Things Blu-ray collection. Not collection even. It's really just like cardboard that makes it look like a VHS tape. But like,
which is cool.
It's because I'm like, I can own that. And I didn't like season 2. I didn't even finish it, but I'll probably get it because I'd like to own that. That's interesting. So what's your fear then? Like, what's the big fear? Like just that you have to, you start a show and then you realize if you want to keep up with it, you got to keep your subscription service?
First, it's this thing of I don't know if I should ever start a show now because I don't know if it's ever going to get more than 1 season because things are going to canceled at like an absurd rate.
Yeah, Netflix is like the new. What was the one service in the 2000s and the early 2010s that everyone was like, don't like their shows, they'll cancel it. It was like NBC or Fox or somebody.
Oh, yeah, something like that.
And it was literally like, if you like that show, it's not going to make it. It just won't.
Oh, gosh, I remember a lot of them. It was like, a lot of them were Brian Fuller shows.
And I think it was the one that did Firefly.
That was Fox, yeah.
So it must have been Fox. Because I know, I think Prison or Breakout Kings was Fox too. And I liked that show. I thought it was a pretty cool cop drama. And then like the second season ends on a massive cliffhanger. And just like, we canceled it.
Yeah,
like this is ridiculous.
Yeah, my primary concern is just that all of these different streaming services are like becoming more and more specific where like, so like I'm watching like Parks and Recreation on Peacock, right? And they have the ads for the service you're using. Like but like they only have like 3 or 4 franchises they can tout because it's like, we got Jurassic Park, Fast and Furious, Harry Potter, Matrix. Those are the 4 things that keep showing at every single ad break. Where it's just like, it used to be like, just get Netflix, man. Netflix is everything. And now it's just like, well, like you have this one for this one and this one for this one. And it's like, they're all like doing their best to try and create something. And I don't know, it's just, it's not the whole thing of like, we're just creating cable again. Because if you want everything, you just have to subscribe to a bunch of services all at once. Where the smart thing to do is just to subscribe while the show you want is out and then cancel your subscription.
If you want everything, get HBO Max. That thing.
I mean, yeah, it's massive.
Massive catalog. It's really good. You could cancel your Criterion Collection account just to have HBO Max because they have tons of Criterion stuff on there. They have a lot of the stuff that you could watch on Hulu. They have on HBO Max. The benefit though of Hulu is if it's a kid's show, I'm pretty sure they're not allowed to like advertise to you. And so like we've been watching regular show on there because Hulu's cheaper and then doesn't have ads running on there. Whereas like if you wanted the same price for HBO Max, because I think they're about to come out with a cheaper tier with ads.
Okay, that's cool.
Then I'm sure they'll maybe have to run it. I don't know. I guess maybe they wouldn't if it's like a policy thing. Yeah, I mean, because like when you're looking at Disney and we just talked about WandaVision and now we're cutting into Falcon and Winter Soldier, it's like, if you want to watch your Marvel stuff, you gotta pay up. $12 a month. Oh, and by the way, we release them weekly,
which is smart.
like, it keeps the money in. unless you're like me and you binge. But
Did you see the news story where like Mindy Kaling is making a show just about what's it like Velma? Did you see that story about Mindy Kaling making a show just about Velma from Scooby-Doo?
no, I know nothing.
So, believe it or not, I'm a huge Scooby-Doo fan as a kid.
Yeah, we got to talk about Scoob at some point because I know you got a lot to talk about with that. I do too. I watched that movie Folding Clothes, one of the first HBO Max stuff I watched, and I was just like, for some reason, could not stop looking at it.
So, like, to be clear, I'm like, there's some people where it's like, oh yeah, I'm a big Transformers fan, but like that means as an adult, they're still watching Transformers cartoons and stuff. I'm not like that. Like, I watched Scooby-Doo as a child, and I have many fond memories, but I've not had any reason to go back and watch it. But I was interested because it's like, okay, so Mindy Kaling, who I like, you know, she wrote a lot of the best Office episodes. You know, she's doing a Velma cartoon, but it was revealed today that Velma in this cartoon is going to be Asian, like East Asian descent, and it's going to take place in a world that doesn't have Mystery Inc. or anything in it. So it's a Velma show without. And Velma's a different character, essentially, and there's no Scooby-Doo elements.
Isn't that the Birds of Prey show from like the 2000s, where it's like it's its own, or even Catwoman, where the Catwoman movie was not Selena Kyle. It's just
Birds of Prey at least tried to kind of tie into like the larger DC mythos because they had like Batman and Joker in it, kind of. But like, yeah, like Catwoman, which just has no Batman or DC Comics element. It's kind of like that, yeah.
A cat burps in her face and she gets superpowers.
And so people are wondering if Mindy Kaling just had a pitch for a show about an Asian girl detective and they just couldn't get the pitch off the ground. So they decided to just add like, oh, but it's actually Scooby-Doo. Kind of like the Pennyworth show on Crackle or whatever it's on, where it's like, yeah, it's a show about a British detective who ends up being Alfred from Batman, you know?
Yeah, that's weird.
It's where it's like, did they just not have any like, which ties into my main concern, which is like Netflix spent $200 million on a new show, a new superhero show, and it tanked. It didn't work. So now we're just going to get more Velma shows where it's like they're just taking an IP that you kind of recognize and making something completely different out of it because that's the only way to get original ideas on the air anymore. And like as part of the streaming wars, they're just going to like guys, we have a new, it just like picks the thing out of a hat. Like, oh, it's a new Night Court show. But it's, you know,
Plinkett would be so happy.
Mr. Plinkett would be happy, but like, oh, but it's actually about a guy who's like a judge on the streets and he solves crimes with a magic eagle, you know, and they call him Night Court because he does his work at night, you know, or something.
And that's because Night Court's more popular statistically than Judge Dredd, I guess.
That's what I realized was describing. Well, Judge Dredd doesn't have a magic eagle or whatever, but
he does have the giant golden eagle on his shoulder.
That's right. And he's judge, jury, and executioner. It's just, I don't know, it's like the weird results of like the streaming wars where now it's like in a world where now you could have all the shows you want. We're getting He-Man again, but it's from Kevin Smith now, you know, and we're getting live action Powerpuff Girls.
And I think I just heard it's a continuation, but then they don't have the original He-Man on Netflix.
No,
I don't think. And it's sort of my frustration with the Invader Zim movie. It's like, I think it's a really good movie. I just rewatched it. It was very, very funny, but I can't watch the original. I can't watch the show on there. It's really strange. And I, you know, thinking about like how like these companies are trying to cover things or maybe make new things, but then they're just shoving it into like a franchise that already exists. There are parts of Falcon and Winter Soldier that kind of give me that energy where it kind of just wants to cut in and put certain like topics it wants to talk about, but without the nuance and care that like WandaVision carried. But I guess like if we want to get into that, we should probably go ahead and introduce the show.
You could. I just want to put a button on when I'm talking. I don't know. I just have. Yeah, we could talk about Falcon Winter Soldier. I just have all these like weird. I just have all these weird concerns, where it's just like I don't want to live in a world where it's just like, you know, we're just getting like the 5th version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or something, and because everyone's too afraid. Even though
the first one where they're really violent. Remember the comic? The first comic was stupidly violent.
And they reference there's this like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles like animated movie where they travel to different versions of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and one of them's that version. And it's like, and like Raphael's like, these guys are great because they're so violent and angry. Like, I can't believe I've seen that for some reason. But yeah, I just don't want to live in this world where like we have a million streaming services, but they're just like they're too afraid to like greenlight anything too expensive that doesn't already have a built-in audience
or too risky. Like
risky.
You're like greenlighting something that's so risky that like you actually repel people from the franchise, a la like Star Wars.
Oh,
I don't know.
Weird offhand thing. Did you see the Powerpuff Girls live action script that got leaked?
No, I didn't. No,
it's horrible. It's like one of the worst things I've ever read. Look that up at some point.
Is this an upcoming episode, or is this your recommendation ahead of the game?
The recommendation is to see if you can find it. It got taken down. At first, people were like, this can't be real. It's too bad. This has to be parody. And then it got copyright stricken and taken off the internet. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, it was real.
Streisand effect. It's happening.
It's really bad. And because, and they're reshooting the Powerpuff Girls pilot to try and save it. But apparently their goal is to make it even more serious and quote realistic, which is the opposite of the feedback from the script. So
that's like the Wonka movie, the one of the Wonka movies, and the one that got greenlit just now is going to be a comedy. But like there was another script floating around that like he's like PTSD ridden after World War I, and like it's like a constant misery, like cynical movie a la Joker. Like literally, it has like Joker energy, and it's just like. It's one of those movies that people read the script and they're like, I want to watch this movie. I really want to see it.
It would be great if it wasn't marketed as a Willy Wonka movie and that was like the secret ending of the movie where like you just see him buying a giant factory and it's like, and your name, sir? Willy Wonka. And like, and it just shows him putting on the suit at the end of the movie.
Be great.
All the Oompa Loompas are just like his friends from war with horrible injuries.
Stands at a pulpit. I am Willy Wonka. And then Iron Man starts playing. Hey there, it's your friendly neighborhood call to action. Just checking in on you. Hope you're doing all right. I'm just stopping by to say, if you enjoy the show, you can always subscribe and write a review for Cinematic Doctrine. There's iTunes, Podchaser, basically anywhere you listen. You can give us a shout out with a thumbs up, 5 stars, gripping positivity. Or if you hate the show, you can say that too.
Wait, what? What are you saying? Why are you saying that?
Well, I'm not going to tell them what to do, Ted. They're free to do what they want. Our analytics say we got a lot of listeners in the US, and they love their freedoms. And you're also free to check out our Twitter. Very active there. We host polls, memes. There's also the Cinematic Doctrine Facebook group called Cinematic Doctrine Facebook Group. If you want to join, just answer the questions, read the rules, and tell them the podcast sent you. Also, you should check out our website. Some really cool stuff there. Editorials, written reviews for movies we haven't had time to cover. Always check out cinematicdoctrine.com when you get the chance. Oh, Ted also told me I shouldn't forget to mention the Patreon. Something about you can support us or something? Wait, Ted, I thought this was like a hobby thing. You want me to
expand Cinematic Doctrine. You know this already.
Right. Yeah, I forgot. I'm the one who put all this together. Yeah, Cinematic Doctrine has a Patreon. For as low as $3 a month, you can gain access to exclusive content like The Pre-Show, which features free-form and Christian-friendly discussions on all kinds of topics, as well as influence the podcast. That's right, each month you get to vote on a movie we discuss on the show. Previous movies our lovely Patreon supporters have chosen are To All the Boys I've Loved Before, Hamilton, Onward, and American Gospel Christ Alone. You guys have good taste. Anyways, I gotta run, so I'll see you guys later. If anyone listening can understand how we feel about Falcon, it's that it's okay, and it's really not worth talking about, but I guess we're going to talk about it anyway.
No, we're going to talk about it.
So, all right, let's save this. Let's get into it.
There's two halves to this Falcon and Winter Soldier review. There's my review of the first 5 episodes, and there's my review of the last episode. But you said you're going to introduce the show.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and introduce it. Sometimes there's just conversations that are much more engaging to me than whatever we're planning on actually talking about. Anyways, so Falcon and Winter Soldier is the second of the MCU TV shows that they're basically putting out. And of the 3 that we basically knew about, which was WandaVision, Falcon, and then Loki, Falcon was the one that when I talked to people, they were the least excited for because it just looked more like just like a tactical espionage thing and not quite as like mysterious as WandaVision, or just without the charisma of Tom Hiddleston being Loki, and also the mystery that's surrounding that one too, which also looks like it has to do with TVs. So I don't know. That's kind of interesting. But then I know that when people were watching it, they actually quite enjoyed it, and the show seemed to improve as it went on. But that's more about engagement. The actual show itself is characters who I don't remember, so I'll just use a mixture of characters with names and actors with names, because everyone's got one. Anthony Mackie, our Falcon, basically is just the beginning of the show. Is he's trying to just get alone. It's just very like daily life. He's doing missions here and there, but they're kind of more just like working with the military style missions, and then getting a loan so that they can fix their boat, their family boat, because it's important to him. Simultaneously, Bucky is going to therapy, and it's a court mandated therapy for all of the PTSD he's accrued for basically murdering several, I guess you could say hundreds, maybe even thousands of people, because he was just alive forever the whole time. And it's not going well. The therapy is difficult for him. He's trying to reconcile the guilt and the shame that he carries. And the way that they portray this, I think, was really effective. And I wish we got more of. And especially with the way the character arc ends for him, I wish was much more effective. Even so, it's quite compelling. He's trying to make amends with the people that he helped or influenced or affected during the time that he was the Winter Soldier, without necessarily telling them he's the Winter Soldier, or in other cases, they know he was, and he's basically saying, I'm done, or in some cases, trying to say he's sorry. On top of that, he's trying to also live his life a bit reluctantly. So in the first episode, there's a scene where he goes on a date, and it's quite difficult. And it's emotional. It's because we have the additional information of like, this is just a really tragic, sad character whose past is worse than, frankly, his future. His future seems pretty bright, unless Kevin Feige has a lot of tragic intentions for the next phase. With if WandaVision had anything to say, that had some tragic energy to it. So, but then of course there's a main plot going on apart from the drama, and that's that there's this terrorist group. And it's
the Flag Smashers.
The Flag Smashers. And they're debatable, considered terrorist group because, of course, the show wants to... Well, the show is playing with nuance. I won't say that it is successfully employing nuance, but is playing with nuance of it depends on whose side you're on, whether or not this is a terrorist group. But the particular objective is that they believe that life was better, I believe, before the blip, or were these people who were blipped back in? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Life was better during the blip, because
during the blip, right.
What happened is that during this time of chaos and upheaval, all these other countries just opened up their borders and would take anyone in, right. And everyone, it was exactly the world that Rage Against the Machine wants to exist, So life was better because it was just a big old community, and they gardened together and helped one another out.
Correct.
And it didn't matter race or creed. Everyone was working together in a big old city on a hill, so to speak. So
simultaneously, they're helping out refugees, and they're helping out where NATO and other government agencies are not. I don't know if it's particularly NATO, but let's be real here. The show's pretty overt about the examples it's giving. Blip being Arab Spring, refugees being the Arab Spring refugees. You have terrorist organizations and groups regarding like purposes and what they're doing behind, and trying to engage why people are doing what they're doing when you're thinking across country lines. Anthony Mackie's entire please help me with his character's actual name, because I'm just going to use the actor's name, or I'm going to use Falcon. What is his actual name?
Who, Anthony Mackie?
Yeah, in the show.
Sam Wilson. He
basically has decided not to take on, I was going to say the cowl, but that's Batman. He's not taking the shield of playing Captain America, and he's decided to say this is a symbol that needs to be out there and represent that, like, we can be quote unquote Captain America. We don't need the symbol. We can just do better. So he's reconciling what it means to really deny himself from the gift that he's been given to be Captain America. Of course, even the phraseology gift is debatable. Meanwhile, he's learning about his history, or the U.S. history, both as a black man and also as an Avenger and a hero, and how that affects, I'm talking about this scene with a loan. He doesn't get the loan. And it's almost pretty clearly, it's at the very least, it's emphasized as a systematic thing, as opposed to like an overtly racist thing. But that doesn't, of course, mean that the system isn't racist. And then also you have Bucky, who's going through basically reconciling his past of being bad. which is also a very modern thing for a lot of people, is reconciling, like, how have I contributed to a poor, dangerous system? Or am I responsible for particular things that have affected people that I care about who don't look like me? The show is complicated. I think it might have too much going on. Going into my opinion, I mean, I think it has a lot that it really wants to get into, but I don't know if I necessarily like how it gets into them, and I don't necessarily know if it balances them well. If you were to compare this to WandaVision is a lot more serious, and a lot of the comedy is situational. It's not one-liners. And I think the comedy is very funny in WandaVision, as opposed to a lot of other Marvel movies, which is just one-liners that aren't very funny. Frankly, when it comes to Disney properties, I think Pixar gets one-liners pretty well. I think they're usually quite funny and very effective and very like on the nose, but just really good and well delivered. Whereas like Marvel's one-liners have just always been very frustrating or offensive. I mean, Ultron has some really offensive one-liners when you go back to it, but that kind of makes sense when you see who wrote it. And this show does a lot of one-liners, but then also seems to want to do what Daniel and I have talked about, where it's like these Marvel shows want to be a bit more adult and mature than the movies were. And so we'll get into it when we get like more in depth into discussion. We don't really have a spoilers bar. We just sort of naturally get into it. So if you're over halfway into the episode, expect spoilers. But there's like a part in this season that gets rough, and it's just really quick. But it's kind of in the midst of like constant jokes and weird banter that like it's very confusing, but not in the WandaVision where like an episode can end with this tragic sadness and then bring out a really good joke that leaves me confused. This is more like they didn't mean to make it so confusing. I feel like Dan, I mean, we talked, I think of the two. So anyone listening, we've actually recorded these back to back, but of the two that we're talking about, we talked about Falcon the most before we got started, because I think Falcon leaves us the most frustrated, and I kind of feel like some of my frustrations here, but I want to hear your frustration before we get into the specifics, because it's hard to discuss frustrations without being specific. So Let me pass this over, Dan. What do you think about this show? What you vibing?
So the first 5 episodes are, I really enjoyed the first 5 episodes of the show. I'm a sucker for anything that gets into just like showing what the day-to-day life is in a weird world. I like the stuff in Mandalorian where you just see what life is like for the different people on different planets.
Yeah, like the frog lady.
Like the best character in the show.
I gotta get to another planet, but you gotta fly. You can't do light speed, or else my eggs will die.
Or
like, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then you get the people on, I think it was Tatooine, where like the minute the Empire fell, it's just a different group of bad people took over the town.
Right? Yeah,
because it's a power vacuum. Yeah. Stuff like that I really enjoy that kind of stuff. In fact, the Winter Soldier early on has a lot of that, where you see like when Sam Wilson's not being the Falcon, he's just a guy who's trying to get a loan. So
he's just a dude.
His family's business.
Yeah,
I like that you see actual consequences for people's actions. Like Bucky, poor Winter Soldier, he's dealing with all the fallout from all the lives he took. Yeah, it calls back to that line in Civil War where Iron Man's pressing like, do you remember my parents? And he very bluntly says like, I remember everyone. I remember every single person I ever killed. And that's pretty heavy. And that's, it really grounds the characters and gives sort of context for all of these different action sequences you see them in, where they're just killing tons and tons of people. And, there's some actual there's really blood on their hands for that.
Right.
And I like seeing what life was like during the time post-blip, post-snap, whatever you want to say.
I thought that was a really cool narrative choice throughout the series, was to, I mean, like the blip is such an interesting plot point to be like, hey, like we get a bit of that 5 years in Endgame, but not much.
Yeah.
But remember, it was 5 years.
It's the single worst thing to happen ever.
Yeah.
so
bad.
And we forget, like, we, the audience, are aware of the fact that people are coming back. The people in the universe here do not do that, And, it's been a popular fan desire is like, oh, if you want to relaunch a lot of or just like incorporate all the stuff from the other television shows. The Netflix characters work great in the show that takes place during that 5-year period. just following the Punisher around, like killing all these bad guys, like all these like
Yeah.
pirates and drug dealers or
Because
whatever.
there's half of the heroes are gone, so like, why not?
Yeah, someone's got to clean up the debris. It's going to be, John Barenthal as Frank Castle, So that stuff is really great. But then when you get into the actual narrative thrust of it, where I love the character of John Walker, who they introduce, who early in the very first episode, they established that Sam Wilson does not feel like he should take up the mantle of Captain America, which is great. I really like that. I like the idea that he's like, Steve Rogers was really his own person. He stands alone, and he represents America in a way that I never can. So you do get into stuff there where, we're dealing with Sam Wilson is carrying the weight of, as Zemo put it, the African-American experience, where, he's just like, this isn't for me. And there's a lot of personal reasons for this, but also at a grand scale, like he wants to respect the legacy of his friend on top of that. So, and then the United States government immediately just goes, we need a win. We need someone to help, because we've lost the Avengers, and the Avengers, whether they like it or not, are very American symbols in this world. And so we need a mascot. And so they hire this guy, John Walker, who is the perfect soldier, to be the new Captain America. They even give him a black friend to help him appeal to everyone. Battlestar, who is
a good performer.
Who's good. He's great. He's a good guy. They do a good job on the show of showing that Battlestar is a, for as far as the barometer goes for characters, he's a good dude. He's very much John Walker's conscience. But in complete contrast to Steve Rogers, at the very beginning of the first Captain America film, we're talking to Stanley Tucci. The conversation he has is, I do not want to give a serum to a good soldier. I want to give it to a good man. And that is the key difference between Steve Rogers and John Walker. John Walker he's a soldier through and through. He takes orders. He does exactly what he's told to do. While Steve Rogers was very much a man of his own conscience. He made decisions based on what he thought was the right thing to do, good or bad. And so we see as John Walker attempts throughout the show to do what he thinks is the right thing to do based on his orders, where he constantly messes up missions. He constantly does might makes right type of decision making. He doesn't want to negotiate or talk to people. He actually ruins a moment between Sam Wilson and the leader of the Flag Smashers, where he's actually reaching her, and he decides to get too forward and too aggressive with her. And we see throughout the show, he learns both that he is not a very good hero. He constantly loses fights. He constantly loses battles. He loses to the Dora Manju. I can't remember. I'm really bad at pronouncing their name. Mm-hmm. The warriors from Wakanda. He loses to the Flag Smashers. And the whole time, he wants to be more powerful. He wants to be stronger. And he constantly sees his own faults, and he sees where he falls short of being Steve Rogers. And so finally, when presented with a moment and to take the super soldier serum, I think around episode 4, episode 5, he takes it, and Battlestar gets killed. And in a moment of rage, he uses the Captain America shield that he's been given to kill, violently murder one of the, and I use the word murder not because it's killing, but he essentially decapitates. You don't see it on screen, but they very clearly imply that's what happens with the Captain America shield somebody. And we're left with one of the most powerful visuals of any Marvel property, which is Captain America with a blood-covered shield after killing someone in the streets, as people with phones take pictures and they videotape it. And he very much is the Captain America that exemplifies where America falls short. He is violent. He tries to always get his way, regardless of who he hurts. And he
reactionary,
very reactionary.
I guess maybe
and it's a chilling scene,
a politically dangerous word, but more in the sense of like he's responding. He's not being necessarily proactive or patient. He's just like, oh, somebody killed my friend. All right, I'm gonna go kill them without really checking facts, without investigating, without responding.
Due process.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not even the person that killed his friend.
Right. Exactly.
he killed the first person he saw.
Yeah.
In parallel to this, Sam Wilson, Bucky shows him one of the original people to also undergo super soldier program, Isaiah Bradley, who is, in the comics, I think he's the second Captain America. But within the context of the show, he's this older African-American man who was given the super soldier serum. He's one of the only people to survive in America. The government, I should say, has been trying to cover up his existence for decades. And they erased him from the history books. He's not given any credit for his contributions to this country. And so he's very against the idea of Sam ever becoming Captain America, because he just doesn't think any black man ever should, because of what this country did to him and people like him. And it's a clear parallel to the syphilis project, where they gave black men syphilis, telling them it was some other drug to see what would happen to them. I can't remember their name off the top of my head. But that was a real thing that happened. The government experimented on.
Mm-hmm.
They also did the same thing to people in the Appalachian Mountains and other things, which I guess we're not really going to get deep into because I don't think we're qualified.
Well, even talking just how science has treated Black people is very bad. I mean, there are still doctors who will say that women have a higher pain tolerance, so you don't have to give them painkillers when they're giving birth. And it's just not true. Like, it's just bona fide untrue.
The tea and tulip, just every day I grow more certain of its trueness, the total depravity of man. But
right, exactly. And it's one of those, it's actually like even just, I have, my wife says she even has a friend or two that are Black or have spoken, or maybe they're coworkers who said like, yeah, they're afraid to have kids because of how the science community continues to treat them. So it's like, it is a very, this show is using storytelling to basically, again, I talked about how Flag Smashers is like a group that's responding to the Arab Spring. The blip is the Arab Spring. This Isaiah Bradley is the harsh history of how Americans have treated Black people.
Right.
And he's the jaded response to that, which is a wholly and completely reasonable response.
Understandable. Yeah.
Reasonable response.
Yeah. And I know my description is getting a little long in the tooth.
It's okay. I mean, this is what the show's about. Like, this is what it is.
What I'm trying to portray is there's these overarching things that they're doing. You have stuff with the Flag Smashers, which is this, they're complicated, understandable villains, where if they weren't killing people, you could even call them, commendable
heroes
who they're just trying to make their way in the world. And the way they're doing it may not be to the liking of some people, but that's what they're trying to do. And then you have the stuff of Bucky Barnes is trying to make amends for the people he's killed while him and Sam Wilson are trying to track down Flag Smashers. But conversely, Sam Wilson is seeing the seedy history of this world while grappling with whether or not he really should take up the mantle of Captain America, while someone else has the mantle and is doing bad things in memory of Steve Rogers, who himself is just struggling to find his own way. But he's doing so in a way that's violent and reprehensible. And in the end,
fatal.
He truly becomes a corrupt, evil character, essentially. That all happens across 5 episodes. And it's very good.
Mm-hmm.
It's compelling. It's interesting. And even if Disney doesn't always stick the landing with things, I was like, this is at least thought-provoking. Because at the very least, in your superhero show, we're going to see a guy with wings fly around. He fights George St. Pierre, one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time. He plays Betchok the Leaper. Big GSP fan. So I always love seeing him and stuff. He's just such a charming guy. I love him. He's only beaten twice. Anyway. And so like there's some fun action scenes, but in between it, there's this really engaging, interesting stuff thematically, politically. And just like it raises good questions about morality, like what should you do? Should you be loyal to a country versus loyal to your fellow man? Should America constantly grapple with its past, or should it be able to move on from that? Or how do we make amends for those sorts of things? And they do get kind of like what some would call a centrist kind of approach to it, where you just see the moment where Bucky Barnes and Sam Wilson work together to fix a boat. The boat is an obvious metaphor for America. They don't want to let it go. They want to fix it together. And you see the community come together, and it is the kind of, I don't want to say middling, but it is kind of like an acceptable resolution that everyone of all political stripes can come together and go, you know what? We can't do this one man at a time and work together,
Exactly. Yeah.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Based on everything I just said, Melvin, based on what I said about...
that would have been a good, strong first season.
Well, based on what I just said about John Walker and Sam Wilson and all this other stuff. And there's tons of stuff I'm not even mentioning. But
Zemo.
Zemo was great. Zemo was one of my favorite parts of the show.
Very good addition. Very good addition.
Bring him from prison, and because they need his help to track down the Flag Smashers, and he has a great dynamic, or he's constantly, a couple steps ahead of them. He's really charismatic and funny. He's one of my favorite villains.
He's like a narrative partner to the idea of kind of how vague the show wants to be, not regarding its morality, but regarding each individual character's morality. Because like Zemo is a pretty bad guy, and then we learn now that he's like kind of like a kingpin, so he's definitely a bad guy. But then like he's helping complete tasks that are important. He's being civil with the two of them, even though he's like basically his neck's under their foot kind of thing. It's a good complexity to a good collection of characters that are eclectic and interesting.
Yes.
And that's probably what makes it, I would say, passable in terms of putting up with things that, as the show gets to, are a little much. Which, of course, you said the first 5 episodes you liked. I guess like 6 through, what was it? There's 8 in total, right? 8 or 9? I don't know, but
I think it's only 6 episodes, right?
I feel like I thought it was like 7.
I think you can hear me clicking right now. Yep, it's 6 episodes.
Oh, really? It was only 6.
WandaVision's like 8 episodes.
Okay, yeah, because I thought there was like filler at some point. It felt like there was filler, but I guess the show was.
The filler is the stuff of Madripoor, where they go, and then Agent 13 is there.
Oh, that's right.
Who's like a big character. Like, they build her up as like a really important to the show, and there's a big reveal at the very obvious, clear reveal at the end that everyone saw a mile coming. Yeah, Sharon Carter. I call her Agent 13. But
I didn't see it coming, but I wasn't necessarily like surprised. I was just frustrated that like she revealed who she was, and then the Flag Smasher didn't go, it's her. The Falcon's right in front of you. You just found out a really important detail about another character.
Yeah, it's just
why don't you just tell him? So then, like, as it's happening, I can't stop thinking, like, you could just say, like, well, what was the character's what's the comic book name she has anyway? I forget. Like
she's Agent 13.
No, there's Agent 13, but then she's the
power broker.
Right. Like, why didn't she just go, she's the power broker, she shot me, she's bad. Like, and so then, like, there's supposed to be this dramatic climax, and I'm like, but why did she say anything? It's just so, let's talk about the ending.
So, okay. Like, so what I'm trying to get at is if based on what I've said, and if you're watching the show, there are clear, obvious places this should go, right? I'm not crazy in thinking that, right?
And not in the sense that WandaVision we're making fan theories and like deciding this would be super cool. This is more like when you watch a character arc, you can kind of see when you see how a river goes, you know the directions it's going, you don't necessarily know where it stops. So like, that's what this is. You know where it's going, you just don't know how it's going to stop. But then it stops, Daniel.
So, okay. I'm not even going to bother with the meat, like with the basic, like bare bones plot, because it's dumb. Because like the point is there's a big bad thing that's going to happen, and you stop it. So all the characters, everyone gets there. It's the T-shaped tree in Mad World.
It's basically a political terrorist attack. A bunch of people are going to die.
It's a great timing on their part as a bunch of people rush upon a Capitol building to stop something. So, which I don't know if they wrote that into the show based on recent events, or if that's why they delayed it. But yeah, everyone shows up, and all the characters are there, and Sam Wilson gets his which immediately he gets his comic book accurate Captain America suit, which is really cool.
Really cool suit.
They even do some cool stuff where he does combo moves with the shield and his wings, which are fun. George St. Pierre shows up to fight him again. I think he dies again. This is the second time he's died on screen because he got killed in Age of Ultron too. Was it Age of Ultron or Civil War? Batroc the Leaper got killed. I don't remember.
They're gonna run out of performers, like stunt performers.
No, Winter Soldier. He got killed in Winter Soldier. I'm sorry. He got killed in a bathtub or something. And so a couple things happen. First off, John Walker shows back up again for the final battle, which makes sense because he's been built up as kind of the archenemy. And then for seemingly no reason, he starts helping the heroes fight the Flag Smashers. And that's it. There's no moment where he turns on the heroes. There's no moment where he has to help them out of desperation. He helps them, and they just kind of go, it's nice seeing you again, John. You know, like it's like they forgot his character arc. It just stops. He's slowly becoming more and more deranged and evil, and he just shows up again, and then he just walks away. Like, they don't even arrest him. He shows up. He gets involved in physical combat. Like, he just beat up a bunch of people, villain or not. Like, what the heck? They know who he is. He's the only guy dressed like Captain America. It's not like he's a secret. Like,
and like happened? He's using like a costume of Captain America because he doesn't have
made his own shield.
Yeah, and it's like I suspected he was going to have a light redemption arc in the sense that he would start to transition away from his aggression and think more about his like companion, and he would have like, because you have the whole like in the heat of the moment you know what to do, and like at the end that's when he grabs the truck to pull it back, but then it doesn't work anyway, so it's like whatever. But like, so I was expecting like something where it's like he's on in the path to getting better. And then what you have is, as he's in other movies, he's a wild card. He is the wild card where you don't know if he's going to lose it.
Yeah, he's like an anti-hero or something.
Or if he's going to do the right thing. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting because we've kind of just had characters that always just do the right thing. It'd be more interesting to just have characters where, like, when they show up, you're like, what's going to happen? Like Zemo. Like, that's why he was so compelling.
Yeah, Zemo's an actual wild,
but then he doesn't do anything, and then he just leaves, and then he hugs his wife at the end and has a new suit.
And then they give him his comic book name, U.S. Agent, but like, yeah, there's no indication that he's had any change of heart.
And Maggie Liser's in this, dude. From Veep. That's right. Yeah. Arrested Development. What's her name from Seinfeld?
Julia Louis-Dreyfus. Yeah. Who's great. Her 2 scenes, she's awesome.
Maggie Liser. I can't finish the whole moniker because it's a curse word, but I was surprised. Well, you know what? Justice is blind, I suppose. All you Arrested Development fans will know what the heck I'm talking about. Daniel will know someday when we talk about it on the podcast.
Sure. So that's happening.
But, reluctantly, sure.
I watched the first few seasons, but yeah, so that just doesn't work at all. They just take this great, and then later in interviews, I don't remember if it was Carrie Skoglund or whoever who was working on the show. They're like, yeah, we kind of were hoping people warm up to John Walker by the end.
Dude, you just severed a dude's head.
Do you know what show you're making?
Wearing the American flag.
What?
Meanwhile, you look on the news and it's like, this is America. No, it's just Childish Gambino's This is America. Like, this, what do you mean we're going to warm up to him?
It's bizarre.
I warmed up to him because I like Wyatt Russell. Because it's basically Kurt Russell 2.0.
He's great. He's great in this show.
He almost acts and performs exactly like his dad, but not in the sense that he's copying him, more just because he's his son.
Yeah.
So I'm glad he's around, but I warmed up to him for the actor, not the character.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's a bizarre decision, and then the whole thing is capped off with after the Flag Smashers stopped, because there's one senator or government guy, suit, who's clearly been like, let's just get rid of all these immigrants out of these places. They'll find new homes. Like his comic, he's a Captain Planet villain. He's just comically evil for no reason. And then he has a moment where like Falcon, after stopping the bad guys, comes down the middle of the street and there's cameras everywhere, and he's got the Captain America shield, and he's Captain America now. Captain America is black now. I deal with it. And then he's just like, he cuts this he cuts the monologue from Rocky 4 where Rocky's like, people could change. He does that for 20 minutes. And it's just horrible. It's just the most sugary sweet, corny.
The Letterboxd reviews are pretty bad. They're like, yeah, if only it was so easy to just tweet at a politician and tell him you should do this.
It's such boilerplate, basic, we are the world. He just basically should have just started singing that. It's the same speech, And it was just I half expected Hulk Hogan with a guitar and an American flag behind him to come out, and eagles to fly in, and Abraham Lincoln comes from his grave and goes, "This is what I always wanted," and pat Sam Wilson on the back. It's just terrible. It's the most if you asked me in 8th grade to write what I thought, what speech would change the world, this is the speech I would write, I would have thrown in more Jesus stuff, it's so bad. It's the cheesiest, most on the nose thing in the world. And then him and Bucky go, haha, that was something. And they walk off. And then the one good thing is that they give Isaiah Bradley, the whole thing is that his history's been erased. And so they take Isaiah Bradley and they take him to the museum we've seen throughout the Marvel films with Captain America. Mm-hmm. And they've now added an exhibit talking about Isaiah Bradley, the unsung hero of the Super Soldier program. Yeah, that was
great. That was the one.
Beautiful.
That was emotional. And I wanted Bucky's closing to be emotional too, but they basically fast forward through him meeting with the neighbor who he's trying to reconcile with.
Oh yeah, that's good. I totally forgot to mention that. That was good stuff.
And I would have loved that I would have loved that conversation. I would have loved to sit there and listen to him, because then you're basically getting the character. You're basically getting the metaphor for people reconciling their the sins they've done and seeking, confessing and seeking repentance for them. And that would have been just gut-wrenching. It's just gut-wrenching to watch. And they not only like fast forward through it with cuts that are really quick, but they have like music play over it that like is basically the sort of like resolution tune that just decides like
all's well that ends well.
Yeah, he's okay. Yeah, it's all right. It's cool you killed my son. Like no biggie.
It doesn't work. There's 3 reasons why this episode doesn't work. The first is that the action scenes, like, okay, I can accept if you decide to go all out, like, you know, we're going to throw the kitchen sink at the wall kind of action scenes. But it's very basic, like streaming service action scenes, which is punchy. It's punchy, kicky. And like the Flag Smashers are not good villains because of their physical,
they're not intimidating
threat to the heroes. They're interesting villains because you kind of understand why they're doing what they're doing. And it's just like bad, uninspired action. It doesn't work because all of the resolutions that do happen are either disappointing or don't make any sense. You get the reveal that turns out that, you know, Sharon Carter's been in the power broker this whole time. Okay, you know, and it's fine, you know, and the resolution of the Flag Smashers thing is that they just beat them up. The resolution of the John Walker thing is that I guess he's an okay guy.
We'll just whitewash his history.
It's just okay. And all of the complex moral, ethical, racial topics we brought up get taken care of with just this terrible monologue. And it's just, yeah, it's like the resolutions don't make any sense. The character arcs don't make any sense. They go with the most obvious, blunt thing you could think of, and it's just a real letdown. You know, like they flirted with so many interesting ideas and themes, and then they either lacked any sort of convictions, where either they just didn't want to make any sort of resolutions to those complex problems they brought up for fear that doing anything in any direction would just make people mad or what. But it's just a giant, it's just the air got let out of the balloon all at once and it just kind of flopped on the floor, and it's just a bummer.
Sounds like a wet fart. Yeah, it's not good. It's tiresome because like it right after WandaVision, it's kind of tough because WandaVision was so good that like going into Falcon, I was like, I really want this to be just as good, especially because I liked the first episode and the fact that like I remember talking to my wife, I was like, that was like nothing happened. That was awesome. Like literally the episode's like, I'm going to therapy, I'm trying to get a loan, credits roll. That was great. I love this. Because like you can't do that in the movie because you just you're a parent who just took 6 of your kids to the film. You just spent $100. You got popcorn and all these tickets. Your one kid pooped, so you have to go out and take him to get a diaper change. The other ones are too loud and being obnoxious. Your last kid just got into a fight with someone he sat next to. So now it's a miserable time. I just want this movie to be loud enough and dumb enough to keep to drown all this out. So they can't just have Bucky sit in therapy. He's got to punch his feelings out. And then in the show, they could take their time and do it. And then like, yeah, the last episode is almost like they ran out of time. Like, just give them another episode. I don't know. Like,
it feels like the entire creative team and everyone behind the camera got fired after episode 5, and they just found people like around set, like, are you a filmmaker? And they're like, oh, I'm a senior in film school. You know, like, oh, I guess you're directing. You know, whatever.
Surprise promotions. Yeah,
that's what it feels like. It's like there's this great scene early on where like after John Walker kills that guy, he's in front of Congress or whatever. And he's talking about like, this is the person that you made me. This is what you trained me to do. This is your fault.
Yeah, you made me into this. This is the entire system has created me into this, and now I'm getting like court-martialed.
That's an interesting thing. Like this is the Captain America you secretly wanted, you know?
Which is also a real thing. That's literally like what happens to soldiers. Oh, we just made you into a killing machine. PTSD? What's that? Go home. Like, and
he shows up and it's like the Super Friends.
Yeah,
you know? It's just
so
like
weird.
There's 2 Captain Americas. What an embarrassment of riches. Let's fight the bad guys. You know, it's bizarre.
Gee, Bill, America lets you have 2 captains. Like, this is ridiculous. Like,
that is a deep meme reference.
I got more.
I was flabbergasted. I was sitting there watching it. It's funny if you go to the Wikipedia page for any of the shows, they actually show the Rotten Tomatoes score per episode, and there's just this. It's like a chart, and there's just immense dive with the last episode.
It's like Game of Thrones, season 8, where it's just
exactly.
Like,
you know,
just everything's
bad. It's just
wait. You mean this won't all tie together? I would have loved to watch like a live recording where it's like you're watching imagine like you're watching me and Daniel sit on a couch, watch like each episode live. And it's like every episode there's something compelling. You got your 30-minute post discussion. And then like the last episode is like, we're so excited. And then like each 5 minutes, we're just like sunking further into the couch and like just less interested. The monologue starts and like Daniel opens the 6th beer and it gets worse and worse. It's like, man, dude, it's like The Talking Dead when like Walking Dead got worse through each season, and like The Talking Dead became a funnier show to watch because people would just ask the writers, yeah, but why did that character do that? And like the writers just couldn't answer. They're like, well, because we need to do this, which is literally like when Lori gets into the car accident in season 2 and they're like, why'd she do that? And they're like, I don't know. Like,
why'd you write in a car accident during a post-apocalyptic future? There's no traffic.
And it was like, one zombie. She swerves out of the road because one zombie's in the road. But it's a straight road, so you would have seen it. There's no phone. There's not a cell phone in sight. She was not texting and driving. It's just, that's literally what happens with this last episode. It's like, what's going on, man? Yeah. You got it. You had it for 5 episodes. What happened, dude?
I don't know if they're just banking on it, because WandaVision is all signs point to the no season 2. This might get a season 2. So I don't know if they're just banking on like, we'll just, we got another season to fix this
we'll fix it in post.
We'll fix it in post. Because
Marvel's back on their stuff, man. They got a new deal, or they're back on it.
We'll see what Loki's like, but like, part of it is like every episode also threw in a new element. Like, we're going to Madripoor. Oh, Zemo's here. Oh, the Dora Milaje are here. Right. Every episode had new developments, or that post credit scene in season 5 where you see him making each shield with his old medals and stuff. And then like season 6, there's no big reveals. There's no like character cameos or anything. It's just blah, So yeah, I don't know if they're just banking on fans just being so invested. They like, oh, is US Agent going to be in like the Thunderbolts? Is he going to be the Thunderbolts version of Captain America? Or if they're just banking on like, who cares? Like, there's enough breadcrumbs there and carrots to dangle for the audience, or they'll just keep watching to see what happens next. Or if they legitimately were like, yes, this is the perfect, like, this will be a satisfying
this was our
season
vision
finale.
Did anybody in production apologize in an interview?
No, I don't. Not that I'm aware of.
Not that they should. I don't think they should. I mean, if they did, that's unfortunate.
It's not good. I don't. This is one of the most disappointing things I've seen out of the MCU in terms of like being genuinely excited, because it's like, even if something like Age of Ultron is pointed to as one of the worst movies in the franchise. But even then, like, I can sit there and be like, oh, but there's these awesome action sequences. There's a lot of fun character moments. It didn't aim so high and then hit so low, where it just kind of, this had like such potential for 5 straight episodes. And that's what's so disappointing in it. There's all these flirtations with greatness that just end up, none of it gets paid off. None of it goes anywhere. And it's just like, it's sad. It's just sad.
It's like in SpongeBob when when Squidward's building the art piece, and it's like this amazing piece of art, and he's like, it's not finished, and then he puts a squid nose on it. It's just like, now it's done. No, he just made it worse, dude. It's so bad. Oh man. All right. So the show's fine, and then it's not, but I guess it's not the worst thing I've seen this year. It's just, I agree though, it is annoying.
If that's the bar, then
yeah. I think it is amazing how much impact a poor ending can have. Because you can have a rough start, but if like the ending's good, it's you're holding out for it, and it makes it exciting.
It's the last thing people remember, so you gotta stick the landing.
Because at that point, it's like, I almost wouldn't say watch it, because it's just like, I mean, I guess I would, because it's like, I don't know. It's not my recommendation, so I'm not going to act like I'm about to recommend it in the future.
If it ends up being super important to some future Marvel continuity, whatever, then I guess you got to watch it. or at least
like the last episode was set in the alternate universe, and we're gonna get the real ending in like another season or
in
something.
Multiverse of Madness, they'll just be like, "Oh no, only episodes 1 through 5 are canon. Episode 6, that was Mysterio was playing with your minds."
Bring back Gyllenhaal,
which they could do that. I mean, that's what they're doing with like the Flash movies. Essentially, just gonna like make continuity where they want. Michael Keaton, Batman's like confirmed to be back. They showed the shooting locations to like recreate Tim Burton's like Gotham and everything.
Oh,
That's
it's
super
sick.
cool. Yeah.
Is his car going to shoot a pole and then swing around it?
Maybe, we'll see.
That'd be awesome.
The dream big.
So I guess we'll cut into our recommendations then, because I got nothing else to say about this. I mean,
sure,
it was good watching, but and frankly, this discussion was more engaging than the last episode. But I'll start off with recommendations.
Right.
I'm going to be recommending another podcast. This is a whole podcast, not just an episode like last episode. This recommendation is for a New York Times podcast called Day X. It is about an investigation one of their journalists did. I just need to get names at some point. But this journalist from New York Times investigated a particular, like, basically what happened in Germany is that a janitor or custodian found a gun in like a back room. He reported it, and the police basically said, like, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to do is we're going to set up cameras, and we're going to see who comes and gets it. The man who gets it is a man, I believe it was named Frankel A. And if you're a German listener, you probably already know about this, but basically it turns out this guy was a part of a neo-Nazi group that, when he was being interviewed by the police at the time, performed as a Turkish man, because what he wanted was to commit a terrorist attack performing as a Turkish man, to then stoke up hatred and racism for refugees that are in Germany right now. As people have been investigating this further, they've been finding out, like, this man has connections to, like, it's basically the whole Hydra thing in Winter Soldier. It's almost exactly that, which is why I'm recommending it here, because if you want to hear basically a real world situation that's still developing, it's this, where it's like neo-Nazis are basically still very active. If you've seen Eris Wieder Da from 2014, a German film that is it's basically about how Hitler comes back, but doesn't know that he's back, and everyone thinks he's fake. But then it does. They do Sacha Baron Cohen style comedy, where it's like you basically do gotcha interviews with people, where, like, in that particular movie, people are saying, like, "Oh, we wish you were back," and, like, they whispered to him, like, "If you were here, I'd totally follow you." And you're like, "Holy crap, dude, that's wicked." That's what's happening here with Day X, and you're basically listening to how German officials are worried that, like, the police might have neo-Nazis in them, how there's literally a particular some police were let go in Frankfurt because they were in a particular chat group for neo-Nazis, and how that chat group had other policemen in it. An entire system that is like, oh, this is still happening. That's not good. And it's a really compelling podcast, very well constructed. At the time, there's only 3 episodes, but I'm pretty sure by the time this is up, either the show will be done or is still going to be ongoing. I don't know how many episodes they're planning to have, but it is very good. And it's frightening when you realize that because they're using chat rooms, people from all around the world can be in them. And because of the internet, people can communicate across borders. And so I think it's interesting as an American listening to it, because it's not something that's all that foreign to imagine that, you know, racists can be doing horrible things using the internet and have intentions of killing people, and doing terrible things. And in some cases, as the episodes develop, are succeeding at killing people, and committing terrible acts of violence. So definitely check it out. I've been really enjoying it, in the sense that it's educational, not enjoying it because I'm sadistic. That's one of the frustrating things about talking about the news, is to say, like, you're enjoying it, and then it's like, Melvin, what do you mean? Like, so that's definitely my recommendation. And I think it kind of fits the same energy that, that's, I guess, my keyword for today is energy, but it fits the same vibe as Falcon and Winter Soldier does, where it's using metaphor to discuss
real world situations. Day X is just an actual real world situation. So yeah, there you go. What do you got, Dan?
Very different from what you're talking about. So to start with, continue my commentary recommendation. I previously have talked about doing a sermon series with my pastor about Galatians, and so with my young adults group, I am going through the Psalms. And one of the resources that I find to be very interesting when doing that is from Charles Spurgeon. He wrote a 3-volume Psalms commentary called The Treasury of David. And I will say that it kind of breaks my rule on like good formatting, where I find that the commentary is formatted very weirdly, where it includes the entire text of the psalm, and then it includes essentially a sermon from him, and then there's like preacher's tips, where it includes little like factoids and things you can focus on when talking about it, which I find very helpful. But Charles Spurgeon is one of my favorite theologians to ever exist. He's simultaneously includes great depth and when he talks about God or the scriptures, but it's very real world applicable. And he's very contemplative, and just he has a naturally devotional writing style, if that makes sense. Every time I read his work, I'm convicted in some way, and it's just it's a pretty common commentary to find. Like I see it pop up in a lot of used bookstores. The set I have right now, I didn't even pay for it. It was just being given away by a library that I was at. So Treasury of David by Charles Spurgeon, it's a wonderful resource. It looks beautiful on your bookshelf. But as with everything ever Charles Spurgeon ever wrote, I highly recommend it. But in my other recommendation, I'm going to recommend a different streaming series currently on the internet. On Netflix, there was a series called Sweet Tooth, which is recently released. It is based on the comic book by Jeff Lemire. Jeff Lemire is a terrific writer. He wrote AD After Death with Scott Snyder. He wrote some stuff for Moon Knight. He wrote Roughneck, which is a very visceral comic if you ever read it. But Jeff Lemire's Sweet Tooth it was described, if you look on the Wikipedia page, it's described as Mad Max meets Bambi. It's not quite
awesome.
That awesome. But Sweet Tooth, it takes place in a universe where there's a viral outbreak. So may hit a little close to home for some people. But during the same time, and it's unclear what the correlation is, all babies are born as hybrids. They're born half like part animal, part human. So in this post-apocalyptic world where everyone's getting sick and dying and babies are being born as hybrids, we start off with Will Forte playing a dad, and he's great at playing dads with his son, and they live in Yellowstone National Park, and he's just raising his son away from everyone because in this world people are killing hybrids. It's not quite clear what the full reason for it is, and the show kind of delves into that a little bit. But what makes the show work really great is that the child actor playing the kid, because it follows a kid who's a hybrid as he travels attempting to find his mom, hence the Bambi thing, is that the kid actor is tremendous. He perfectly acts like a kid in a way that's realistic and grounded. He doesn't do the thing where like sometimes they're trying to write kids where they always have like really sharp one-liners and are way more quick-witted than any kid I've ever met is. But he plays a virtuous, just gosh darn it, such an adorable, lovable kid. And as he traverses the post-apocalyptic world, almost every character that meets him just immediately falls in love with this kid and wants to help take care of him. And the strength is there's some sort of dual narratives going on where they sort of jump around a little bit to see different characters and how they're doing in this world. And as the show goes on, you kind of see the way that their plots interact with one another. It's really, really compelling. It's emotionally gripping in a way that I haven't experienced on a show in a long time. Which the first thing while we were watching it, we were like, my mother-in-law should never watch this because she hates shows with kids in danger. And that's all this show is. It's just ongoing danger towards a kid. It's compelling. It's beautifully shot. It looks great. And James Brolin is the narrator, and he's just a wonderful narrator. Highly recommend it. Sweet Tooth. It's only at 8 episodes so far that are on Netflix. They are like 50 minutes each. It's really great, and I just really, really like it. And compared to a lot of other comic book adaptations, this one really doesn't, you wouldn't really know it unless you knew the source material beforehand. It really stands alone as its own thing. So Sweet Tooth, it's on Netflix.
Thanks so much for checking out this episode of Cinematic Doctrine. If you enjoyed this episode, consider leaving a review and subscribing to the podcast. And as mentioned before, Cinematic Doctrine has a Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you're opted into a once-a-month movie poll where you decide a movie we discuss on the podcast. There are other unique benefits that come with supporting the podcast, so be sure to check that out at patreon.com/cinematic doctrine. A special shout out to those who support at the Art House Theater tier on Patreon. Thank you so much, Mom, Dad, Melanie, Shirleyan, and Thomas. You guys are the best, and your continued monetary support is greatly appreciated. Until next time, stay cool. Want some Cinematic Doctrine swag? You're in luck. We've got 3-inch Cinematic Doctrine logo stickers exclusive for Patreon supporters. Perfect for your travel mug or laptop. Head over to patreon.com/cinematic doctrine, link in the show notes, and choose the independent theater tier. Doing so will net you other perks too. But let's be real, the podcast stickers are the coolest perk. So get yourself some podcast stickers by supporting on Patreon.